book of Romans, chapters 9 through 11. This is the definitive statement on the part of God with regard to the Jews. And it should expose the lie, really, of Palestinian replacement theology. Namely, that the Palestinians now, because of their longevity in the land, living there for a long time, that preempts, that trumps God's promises to Abraham for the promised land to the Jews. We're coming to a very critical passage, Romans chapter 11. I want to read where we left off last time, beginning at verse 15. For if their rejection, the rejection of the Jews, is the reconciliation of the world, what will their acceptance be but life from the dead? Life, spiritual life, resurrected spiritual life is coming to a remnant of the Jewish people. If the part of the dough offered as first fruits, and now he's using metaphors, and the first fruits refers to the patriarchs, primarily Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Promises were restated to each one of the patriarchs. If the first fruits is holy, then the whole batch, namely all of his descendants, believing descendants, are holy. If the root is holy, there again the root is reference to the patriarch. If it is holy, so are the branches. That which the root produces. The branches are holy as well. Now, if some of the branches have been broken off, Jewish unbelievers, and you, though a wild olive shoot, have been grafted in among the others, and now share in the nourishing sap of the olive root, if you've been grafted in to the descendants of the patriarchs, and you share in that privileged position, do not boast over those branches. If you do, consider this: you do not support the root, but the root supports you. Now, I want to put a parenthesis here, and I want to say what this is not saying. I want to emphasize what this is not saying. And it is not saying that we are engrafted, that our identity is we are engrafted into the church. The term church is not used in the book of Romans until chapter 16. It refers to an assembly, a congregation that meets at Phoebe's house. In the Gospels, for example, only Matthew chapter 16 and chapter 18 uses the term church at all. But wherever the term is used, it is not capitalized. It is not a proper noun. It is a collective or common noun, and it should be better translated and would have avoided multiple problems if it were translated this way, namely if it were translated as congregation or assembly. But as it has been translated, it's been elevated to a level that is unknown to the Scriptures. It's been elevated to an institution. It's been elevated to denominations, to councils, to buildings. If that is not what the congregation means. The congregation is the body of the Messiah, and the body of the Messiah is a continuation of the people of God. There are not two peoples of God, I must tell you. There's not Israel in the church. The church does not replace Israel, but Israel is expanded now to include non-Jewish believers who are engrafted and brought in to the Israel of God, the people of God. But this is very important, and this has reference to our true identity. And it's important that we recognize what our true identity is. I've dealt with this in a little booklet entitled The One New Man. You can get it by going to our website. I think it's $5, but it goes into some detail in explaining this whole concept of our being engrafted into Israel of God. As a matter of fact, Paul says in Galatians chapter 3, the last verse, verse 29, Galatians chapter 3. He says this: if you belong to the Messiah, if you belong to Christ, if you're a believer in Jesus Christ as your Savior, your Lord, your Messiah, if you belong to Christ, then you are now, presently, Abraham's seed, a descendant of Abraham, and you are heirs according to the promise. You are the heirs of what God promised to Abraham and his descendant, because you are now considered a descendant of Abraham. That is your true identity. That is your true identity. If you belong to Christ, You are Abraham's seed, and you are heirs according to the promise. And that is the truth.